In Tarrant County, it has been for a long time. Okay, so let me get all my online videos. We have a few things that we are going to do today. Hopefully, and I actually had fun reading some of your responses to that opener yesterday. I had a lot of people that tell me they want to be able to fly. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. One of the ones that I like, whoever it says that they wanted to be fluent in all languages, I like that one. And then a lot of people they agreed with me with the whole photographic memory, but that also can be a curse because you can't unsee the stuff that you see if you have photographic memory. That is not the right slide. There's my points.
I was super excited.
And as somebody else said supervision, all different kinds of them. All right, we got David. Where's my switch? My allergies hurt. Taking my tissue right now. All right. I see Christian online. I see Avery. Oops, I'm on the wrong day. I've been doing that. I see Cooper. Okay, so David, Benjamin, Haley's not here.
What's popping, Miss Richie?
Cole. No, that's sixth period. Kayla. Christian, Garrett. Jason, Braden, Billy. Austin, Brady. Line. Neil is not here. Ashton. Okay. All right. For today, you should know the answer to this because we've been talking about this for a while. What types of air masses are going to come together to produce wild weather? What is it that we've been talking about? What makes a storm? A polar warm front. Not kaboom, but the bigger the difference in the temperature is going to be the bigger difference in the pressure, is going to be the stronger the lifting of the warm front and the more rapid the cooling and the possibility of doing things like hail and tornadoes. But not every storm is going to produce hail and tornadoes. But yes, your bigger differences in temperature between a cold and a warm front are going to produce weather. Now, what we're dealing with right now, the wind, there's a cold front starting to come through.
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be a lot colder tomorrow than it was today. And that's why it's so breezy. In fact, I can hear whatever it is that's on top of this building, I can hear it moving back and forth.
Is this supposed to rain today?
I think there's a chance, but there's not enough. If we get rain, it's going to be like drizzly rain. It's not going to be like, tornadoes and hail. No, I don't either. Because I am one of those people that I can tell when there is a time coming. I can. Yes, that is today. Did anybody else want the paper version of it? And I remember when I was younger, people were like, you can't tell that we're having a pressure front come through. And I was like, tell that to my knees. Because they hurt. If you have damage, yes, especially if you've had damage done to it, you're going to be, and it's just going to get worse as you get older. I'm sorry, but it is. Yeah, it's just what happens. All right, we are going to talk about storms today. And I'm going to start with hurricanes. And we will then go into tornadoes. And then just in general, thunderstorms. What causes your differences in temperature is almost completely controlled by our sun. Okay, that there is some temperature difference that's geothermic, that's from the heat of the planet, But most of these temperature differences are caused by the uneven heating of the surface of our planet in the lower atmosphere and in the upper part of the ocean. The bigger your difference between your pressures, the bigger your temperature difference, essentially, the more gnarly that storm is going to be. Now, hurricanes, we are still in hurricane season. Hurricane season lasts all the way to November. I just looked earlier, there is like a pressure disturbance, but I don't think anything's really gonna come of it. It's a little early to tell. We have had an insane hurricane season this year. We've had like 25 or 26 things that have been named, and 10 of them have actually made landfall in the United States, whether it be a storm or a hurricane itself. In Port Louisiana, it just keeps getting battered. Battered, hit, battered. But your hurricanes, these are the ones that we're still dealing with. These are your silver tornadoes. They move in a circular form. They are counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. They're actually clockwise in the southern hemisphere. If you go visit South America and you flush the toilet and you watch the water, it spins the opposite way. It is so windy, it's rattling my door. And it's literally causing, it's that bad outside. It keeps making the pressure difference. It keeps making my door rattle. I told you, well, no, I didn't tell you guys yesterday because I didn't see you. The students that I did see yesterday, I was like, yeah, it's going to be crazy today. We've got a front coming through. It started yesterday afternoon, actually.
So, do hurricanes most impact the U.S. like by the Atlantic Ocean?
Most of the hurricane activity that we get in the United States does come from the Atlantic Ocean, specifically the Gulf of Mexico. There are some that do form off the Pacific. They're just not as common. There are hurricanes that form in other parts of the world. If it's over by Asia, those are not called hurricanes, they're called typhoons. It's a hurricane, but they call it a typhoon. It's the same thing. They don't happen as often in the southern hemisphere as they do the northern hemisphere. Specifically at 30 degrees latitude, which is literally where I moved from. It was like 30.23, something like that, almost exactly at 30 degrees. We'll come back and we'll talk about the Coriolis effect in the first 6 weeks. And we're going to mention it today, but we're not going to go into depth with it because when I was looking at the teaks, like I told y'all, I'm literally building this entire course one weekend at a time. The teaks, where did I put them? These. In this particular 6 weeks, it did mention weather, but the Coriolis effect, I don't think is until like teak 14. So what you need to form a hurricane, you need warm water. The ocean is what fuels these storms, at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And I bet you the Gulf is still like 84 degrees. It's warm. It's warm, warm, warm. So you get these pressure waves that come off of Africa, and they move west across the ocean. They come in contact with this warmer water, and they start spawning hurricanes. You're going to have the warm air is going to rise, and then it's going to come into the center, and the cold air is going to sink, which is actually what forms the eye of a hurricane. It's actually the calmest part of the storm, smack dab in the middle. If you move to the coast, and you have to deal with these things like I have, I swear I have PTSD from Hurricane Harvey. But if you notice that these things are out there and they start talking about wind shear, that actually prevents severe development of the storm. I'm not saying that it won't develop, but it reduces how low the pressure becomes. The lower the pressure becomes in a hurricane, the stronger the storm is actually going to develop. And I do not remember what Laura was. I would have to go back and look up its millibars bar. I want to say it was in the 800s, but I'd have to go back and double check. Obviously, you have to have humid air to form moisture in order to form the clouds. And then the Coriolis effect is going to cause that thing to start rotating counterclockwise. You can see the Coriolis effect on Jupiter very easily. You see the different colors of the clouds on the surface. Or the surface, it doesn't have a land surface, it's a gas giant. But those different colors are going different directions. They're going opposite each other at about 400 miles an hour each way. We have that here too. We just don't have those thick clouds like how you see on Jupiter. Is your question?
Is there any benefits from storms?
Rain. Got what plants need. I mean, if we didn't have weather, we wouldn't have life the way that we do now. And what drives our weather is primarily the sun. It's not completely the sun. We've got the Gulf Stream. That's what controls what goes where. We already talked about that. If all the ice melts, then it's going to probably not necessarily destroy the Gulf Stream, but alter it to the point where we very well could have another frozen Earth. It's happened before. We'll get into all the different epics and everything. I want to say it's next 6 weeks. I haven't gotten that far. Like I said, I'm literally doing this a weekend at a time. I've gotten through Wednesday, figured out in my head. Next week. So we mentioned this yesterday. Towards the equator is the tropics. Those are going to be your warmer air masses. Closer to the poles, those are your polar air masses. Those are polar or possibly even Arctic. We just don't get Arctic blasts here in Texas very often at all. But your sun is heating the surface of the ocean. And at the surface of the ocean, it's warmer. As you go deeper down into the water, it does get colder. And as these low pressures come along, that water is evaporating up into the lower atmosphere. Like I said, the Coriolis effect, the way that winds that crisscross each other across this planet, is actually what causes the spinning of a hurricane. I can't remember if there's one more on this slide or not. But But once again, the energy, the actual heating source is coming from the radiation from the sun. We will, we're going to do station models tomorrow, which is a lot more application than what y'all are used to in this class. There's a lot that you need to know to be able to read a station model. It's a whole bunch of numbers. You have to know what each position actually represents. Monday, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to talk about generic heat transfer. You should know the terms conduction, convection, and radiation at this point, but I'm going to assume that you don't. So we're going to go back over them. And how those three processes actually warm this planet, whether it be in the mantle, or it be in the ocean, or it be in the air. And then Tuesday, I will be here. I was just planning on that being a review day and then testing Wednesday. I don't know if I'm going to leave the review behind for you and then still do a Kahoot on Wednesday and then test Thursday. I haven't quite figured that out yet. How many do that? But I will not be here next Tuesday. Gotta take my kitty cat back to the bed. And he's got this disgusting tube sticking out of his side. It's so gross. And if any of you have had to deal with a drain port before, they were the most disgusting things on the planet. They're necessary. All right, so Coriolis effect, just as mentioning. This is the crisscross, the way that the winds go. Just south of Florida, everything's going to the west. That is why hurricanes travel to the west. And then once they go north enough and they hit right at about 30 degrees latitude, latitude is going up and down, longitude is this way side to side. Once they hit about 30 degrees, they hit the eastern band and they start shifting east. That's why most hurricanes, not all, but most hurricanes, if they enter the Gulf, it seems like right around the time they're right underneath Louisiana, they hook. Because that's where that line is. That's where that boundary is. There's one that's 30 degrees that's south of the equator. We just don't live in the southern hemisphere. We're focusing just on the northern hemisphere. But in the northern hemisphere, your storms are going to be spinning counterclockwise. If it's really that windy outside, it's like shaking my doors. It's insane. If you do move to the southern hemisphere, so like Brazil or something, then your storms and tornadoes for that matter would spin clockwise. I said, the way when you flush the toilet, it spins a certain way, or the way water goes down a drain, it spins a certain way. It's opposite in the southern hemisphere. That's really insane. Is that when it's shaking my doors?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as they don't start, opening and closing by themselves, and like getting poltergeist kind of stuff. Yeah, that's the previous district I worked at. My door did open by itself one day, and then in that school, there a few kids actually died in that school. The elevator would go up and down by itself. You've seen the door open and close by itself?
No, I said, why would you notice this door that's open and closing by itself?
I mean,
That's it. No,
I don't see anything here. I know the rattling of my door is the cold front. All right, so you guys have this in Canvas. This is just sort of like a cross section of a hurricane. You have the warm air that is rising on the outsides. The cold air is actually coming down through the center. This is what creates what's called the eye. This is the calmest part of the storm. The strongest winds are what is called the eye wall, which is what forms the eye. It's the boundary of it. But you do have your warm air that's going up. Then you have the colder air that's going down in the very center. And this circular path then is spun by the Coriolis effect. A lot of the bigger storms, you're going to see very pronounced spirals coming off the sides. It looks like arms that are sort of reaching out. So parts, the eye is the calm in the center. I never have experienced the eye of a hurricane. I've been through quite a few hurricanes, honestly. But when the eye wall does pass, you can see the sun. It's not raining. It's not windy. If you're actually in the eye. I've heard all different kinds of stories of people that are like, oh, it's over. And they go out and then here comes the backside of the eye wall and a tree falls on them, or you've got horrible rain, something, house, the roof gets torn off. The eye wall is the boundary of the eye. Those are the strongest storms. If I draw, you see my beautiful artistic, where you got the center, and then you're gonna have the hurricane itself. And then they're gonna always be like this. So those are the spiral bands. My beautiful artistic colors. If this hurricane is heading north, which is what we normally had to deal with where I moved from, the most dangerous part of the storm is this part right here, the northeast quadrant. If it's heading north, now if this thing's heading west, then it would be over here. But whichever direction it's going, if you can stick yourself inside the hurricane, this particular portion, whichever way it's going, you're looking the way it's going, this particular section, that's going to be the worst part of the storm. We always called it the dirty side of the storm. What happens, because this thing is spinning counterclockwise, the moisture from the ocean is being sucked upstream on this side. The one that came through and smacked into my house at the beginning of the year, we are on the dry side of the storm, which is pulling the moisture out towards the ocean. If you have to deal with a hurricane, you want to be on this side of the storm. I'm not saying you want to go play out in the rain and in the middle of the hurricane, but the dry side of the storm has less flooding associated with it. It does matter if you're dealing with high or low tide though. We've talked about tides. If you have a superstorm, then you're on the dirty side of the storm during a spring high tide. That's not good. That's what happened with Superstorm Sandy in, was it New Jersey, New York? 10 years ago-ish, something like that. But what happens when they go over land, they lose their fuel source and they start to die. They start to weaken rather quickly. The one that messed with us so bad, Hurricane Harvey, made landfall 3 times. So came on land, unloaded a bunch of water, it stalled, we went back over to the ocean, sucked a bunch of more water back up, went back up on land in Galveston, dumped more water, went back out to the ocean, sucked up more water again, and then made landfall the 3rd time around Port Arthur, which is really close to where I live. That storm rained 5 feet of rain in like 4 days. It was so much water that Houston sunk by like a centimeter. It was that much water that actually fell. It was just, oh, it was horrible. Doesn't matter how good your drainage is, 5 feet of water is insane.
Vince, have you been to many events? I mean, we're going to those machines that blow air.
The ones that essentially you're like skydiving, like you're floating in the
It just
a
it
wind
gives,
tunnel?
no, you get in this little like capsule thing and then it just blows air on you. The equivalent of like a tornado.
I don't think so.
Like 150 miles per hour, something like that.
No, I don't think so.
Especially I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's too slow.
All right, so your classification of storms, anything below 74 is a, well, I didn't even put depressions and storms. The first thing is called a tropical depression. If it gets a little bit stronger, it's called a tropical storm. As soon as it gets at least 74 miles per hour, it's classified as a hurricane. Category 1 and 2 hurricanes are considered minor hurricanes. They are still hurricanes. I'm not downplaying a Cat 1 or a Cat 2. I'm not. Major hurricanes, the ones where those of us that do live on the coast, the ones we actually start worrying about, start with Category 3. Most people, if they do live on the coast, especially with newer construction, the houses are built what we call to code, and they're built to withstand most of Category 3 type storms. I'm not saying that the house is not going to take any damage at all. That's what current code is. Category 5s, those are really bad. The one that went through Lake Charles, Laura, was 150 miles an hour. It was almost a Category 5. That was the one that was essentially like a tornado tearing through it. And then along came Delta, the one that just went through, and that was a flooder. So everything got torn apart, and now everything's torn apart, and then they had a rainmaker come in behind it. And that one was in this range. Like I said, I am not downplaying a Cat 1 or a Cat 2. Most people that deal with them don't really worry too much about it, even though they can still be dangerous, especially if they stall. Does not have to be a hurricane to be a flood-making event. Tropical storms can do that too. With Allison back in 2000-ish. All right, tornadoes. Moving on to the smaller version, but it's getting rid of more energy in a shorter period of time, and tornadoes tend to be more destructive wind-wise, not rain-wise, wind-wise than hurricanes do. Because they are getting rid of a huge amount of energy in a very short period of time. Most tornadoes, they do not last for long. Whereas hurricanes, you can see the remnants of a hurricane for a week. Now, for hurricanes, wind shear slows their development. For a tornado, it accelerates their development. I think there's one more. There is. What causes a funnel cloud is something, well, updraft is the rising of the air. But if you have intense downdraft, which normally accompanies hail, that's what likes to spawn tornadoes. Which we get here a lot. The water is just rattling. It's insane. I mean, I can feel the air going down the hall.
Sure.
And if you do not know, funnel cloud means tornado. Ooh. Maybe this front will blow that cedar out of the air and my eyes won't feel like this tomorrow. They are really scratchy. Okay, so we did the hurricane numbers, now we're gonna do the tornado numbers. The one that went through Briar like a month ago, that was an EF0.
What does that mean?
Oh, that was the wind. That is the, let me get rid of this. That is the slowest of the, as far as wind speed is concerned. And it can still do a lot of damage. Especially depending on the type of structure it's coming across. If it's like a properly built, like a brick home, yes, you can still have shingle damage, but if it goes through like a mobile home park or like RVs, yeah, they're not gonna handle that very well, just because of the way that they're constructed. An EF1.
They broke trees.
I know, it can. That's why I said I'm trying to downplay the slower wind version. It's just not like a category or an EF5, which is the one that went through Oklahoma not too terribly long ago. Starting with an EF3, you're gonna have some major damage. I don't know how well these structures are built. Now, I remember I was in college, I may have just graduated college, the early 2000s, there was an EF5 that went through Oklahoma City, like through downtown Oklahoma City. Y'all would have probably just been born at this time. And the thing's path was a mile wide, was how big that this tornado was. And it went for miles. A lot of tornadoes will sort of skip. So they'll touch down and they'll do massive amount of damage. Then your funnel cloud will actually lift and then it will come back down again. It's not necessarily one big cloud area that they're going to chew up. They can skip completely. They can hit one side of a neighborhood and they can jump over a few houses and come back down. But yeah, an EF5 is over 200 miles an hour. So to put it in perspective, Category 5 hurricane starts at 157 miles per hour. Tornadoes have more concentrated energy dispersal, therefore the winds are going to be stronger. In fact, this morning I saw some really smart person, let's just say it nicely, recorded outside and it said this tornado comes out of nowhere. Okay, I heard the tornado sirens going for over a minute before this thing came through. Now, if it doesn't look nice outside and you hear the sirens, please take cover. Don't record the tornado with your phone and put it on Facebook. Like, I don't know how that person did not. I don't know. That person got lucky. Trees were snapped. The carport came down. An entire wall was blown out of the side of the house. Animals were running all over the place. Like, don't watch the tornado go down the street. All right. Thunderstorms. So we're sort of going down as far as catastrophic damage is concerned. Just a regular old storm does not mean that it's going to form a tornado. And you're looking for drastic weather temperatures between your warm and your cold front. And really the big trigger is hail. Hail causes what's called downdraft. Downdraft is normally what sparks a tornado. Not always. But we do get hail in this area a lot. We get big hail in this area for that matter. Like softball size hail. And we do have some really pretty lightning storms that happen around here too. Like the one that spawned the tornado that went down in Briar. That storm was absolutely beautiful to watch. We were driving right. Oh, wow. We were driving right through it on the way back from dealing with Hurricane Laura. In fact, we kept getting downdrafts. I don't know if you've ever experienced a downdraft in your vehicle. Your whole vehicle feels like it is being shoved off of the road. Is everybody ready? Almost through. There's not much on this one. So you have a cold front that is burrowing underneath a warm front. It is lifting that warmer air mass up into a colder area, which is then going to cool it off and constrict it. And it's going to squeeze those water particles out. Like in our case, we didn't get rain. At least I don't think we got rain yet today. But we sure got a heck of a lot of clouds with the front that's coming through. We've talked about this more. We did a whole, I keep saying yesterday, Tuesday. This week is so messed up. 3 things are necessary to form a thunderstorm. You have to have what we call a warm parcel of air. You have to have the sun that has heated some type of bubble of air, an air mass. And it's going to rise, and we call this updraft. The atmosphere's got to be unstable, which just means, honestly, in English, you've got warm areas and you've got cold areas, and they're interacting with each other, and they don't like each other very much. Your rainstorms, the actual clouds, those are called cumulonimbus. Nimbus is, I can't remember if it's Greek or Latin, but it literally translates to rain. Though I don't know what the exact transfer is of cumulus, but it means like puffy, like fluffy. Stratus are those, the ones that are outside right now. Those are the blankets of clouds. And then I couldn't fit the third one on here, so it's the last one. We're gonna have tons of time to let me make sure that those of you that are in here aren't missing anything. If you're online, as far as this test, I've had people asking me about retaking the test. Yes, I do have them printed off. I did have somebody come and redo the test and apparently didn't study and made a worse grade on the retest than on the original test.
Miss Richie. Miss Richie. Miss Richie.
And we still need this one, are we ready? All right, last one then. The third part, at the top of the cloud where it's higher in altitude and there's colder temperatures, you have ice particles that are forming. They're not water droplets if they're high enough up. You have enough ice particles that form, you create what's called hail. And as the hail falls, it brings cold air with it into the warmer air, and that is called a downdraft. That is the part that's going to start circulating, and you could possibly have a tornado that forms. Once again, the stronger the differences of the temperatures, the more likely you're going to have severe weather. It does not always mean hail, it does not always mean hurricanes, it does not always mean tornadoes. In fact, if you're watching Doppler, it's something I should probably have put on here, and I did not do this. If you are watching the weather station, everybody's got weather apps nowadays. Doppler radar of a J-hook. Let's see if If I can find one. That's not what I want. I don't want hooks, Texas. I want a J hook. I know how to explain it, but I wanted to show y'all the picture and I'm not finding one. When you take a look at the line of storms, it literally looks like a J. Those are the areas that you need to be really wary of, that are more prone. I'm just not seeing it online, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this because I want to go into those of you that are missing stuff. Sure. Yeah, I'm not seeing this on here. Mesocyclone, maybe on there. Yep, I'm not seeing it. It's okay. I'm gonna stop this. Oh, I see Kayla online.